really basic intro into some of the things that sports psychologists would do with athletes, and also a little bit about how our coaching staff can work with someone like Christine to support our athletes. So hopefully this presentation kind of results in more questions than anything else, and we're going to try to do our best to get as many questions answered by Christine as possible. So I am going to mute everybody. But if you do have a question, type it into the chat bar, and I will be keeping an eye on that. And so I'll interrupt Christine and try to get everything covered. So if you have a question, no dumb questions, get those in, and we're going to try to pay real close attention to those. But otherwise, Christine's going to be talking, and I won't read through her entire resume because it's long and very accomplished, but she's got a pretty strong history in endurance sports, both like kind of water paddling sports, as well as running and triathlon. And I think like a pretty solid race resume, 50, 100 Ks, 50 kilometers, 50 miles, a whole host of distances. And then a really like long list of experience working with elite athletes in kind of a variety of roles, from initially RMT all the way to being a master in counseling. So that's kind of how she came to be involved with us, and the role that she's kind of taking on with this presentation. So I'll just hand off to Christine and let her get rolling, and go from there.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Eric. I guess you muted me too.
There we go. Now you're good.
Just to clarify, I am not a sports psychologist. I am a mental performance. I call myself a coach. The word mental performance consultant. I have to do some more education in order to get that designation. So right now, but I have been working towards that. So just to clarify that, I do have my master's in counseling psychology, worked as a registered massage therapist, have coached and run my own coaching business for 15 years. So so I've done a lot of I've been in all areas of it, working with athletes and the rehabilitation component of it, training component, rehabilitation with massage, working with a lot of Olympic athletes up in Whistler. And but my passion is really looking at the mental side of sport. And one thing, I mean, I'm looking at the list of people that are here, and I'm seeing quite a few accomplished athletes. And one of the reasons I did reach out is that I've known Gary since, I don't know when, before it was Gary.
We met in either 2004 or 2005. I moved to Whistler in 2004, and I feel like I met you within definitely the first 6 to 12 months. But I'm really happy we were able to connect, and really happy we were able to bring you in, because I love the trajectory of your last 15 to 20 years.
And yours. So it's kind of a nice opportunity. I'm really about giving back to the sport, to people. And so what I'm hoping to do tonight, my goal really with tonight is to share with you what mental performance coaching might look like, share with you some strategies. I think a lot of us know them, and we might not be practicing them. And the big thing with any kind of skill, as you know, they need to be repetitive. There needs to be consistency with them. And so some of the work that I've done with sports teams is that we actually do mental performance kind of plan, year training plan. So we would look at teams and look at what are their strengths, where do they need to improve, and then individually, how do we work through that? So it's kind of a neat way to look at it. When we're heading into race season right now, this is a great time to be putting some of these skills into use. So a couple of things just to off the bat. Why would athletes reach out to a mental performance consultant, coach, psychologist? It might be a performance. You're looking for that extra edge of performance that you might not be getting, looking for results. You might be extremely consistent in your training. And then when you hit a race, every time you hit a race, that's the point where you're not performing at your best, yet you can get all your goal times and everything else that are happening through your training. And so there's that inconsistency there. You might reach out to somebody and talking about that, not only your coach. There might be holes in your kind of, I'm going to say holes, might be barriers that you're unaware of, that again, you're doing the training and maybe you're racing, and maybe it's that you're racing well, but when you get to the end of that race, you're still not satisfied with that. What's happening there. And especially we see this a lot when if people are, they get almost overly self-critical when a race doesn't go as planned. And then even though they've maybe excelled their performance level of where they were previously, because they didn't get the result they wanted, they almost go back into this hole. So you might be working with somebody about that. And plus it's a journey of being curious about yourself as an athlete. And I think as an athlete, at times, one of the reasons that I did go into counseling was that as a personal trainer, I was working with people and I was really seeing this disconnect between their physical state and their mental state. And I was like, well, shouldn't this be like, we're missing, we're disconnected here, and how do we get reconnected? So that curiosity led me down this path. And then, as I say, with my background in sport and as an athlete that as a young athlete that struggled a lot with never being good enough, fast enough, fit enough, strong enough, thin enough, pretty enough, blah, 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 blah. I really struggled when I got into a competitive field. I actually suffered quite bad depression. And so, again, it's that giving back that I really want to share. Yeah, there's, I do have a bit of a PowerPoint that just to go through. It's going to be an overview of different things that you might be looking at for mental performance, kind of what are some of those skills. And at the end, I've got a few resources and that stuff I'd like to share with you. And yeah, I mean, one of the things, actually, I'll go through a bit of the PowerPoint, and then I'll come back to a little bit of a discussion, because I would like to know from you guys what kind of areas maybe you are struggling in, what things that you're doing that are working with you, because a lot of times it's sharing that with others and trying new things. I have to say, I did my first race in 2 years this past weekend, and I've been living up in Bella Bella for the last year and a half, and I've had 2.5 kilometers of road that I could run back and forth on to do my training, and 3K up a mountain and 3K back down. That's it. And so, yeah, to get out and actually do a race was very exciting. But, like, I actually went through my own little kind of, I kind of used myself as an experiment when I was out there, taking different tools, using reframing a lot, using front loading, which is something that we do with ADHD kids. I worked in a school setting, and it was something, but it was amazing to do. So again, just trying these other little things. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to share my screen. I'm going to put up a PowerPoint and go through it. There's a couple of slides I'm not going to really go through, but the majority of it I will. And let's just bring this up here. Okay. And and we're going to come up here. Sorry, everyone. There we go. Okay. So mental performance coaching. So what is it? Can everybody see okay? Yes, thumbs up.
Yeah, I think you can maybe just double click that and it'll go full screen.
Yep. That didn't want to work.
It's at the bottom. Sorry, I don't. Yeah,
Yeah.
the top there. A little bit right. It's the fourth icon over there, just below where you are now.
Below where I am, the fourth icon.
Can
you see this?
Yeah, I can see all that. It's not in that menu. It's on the top.
Can you do it?
Oh, wow. Michael is pointing to it. That's perfect. I don't know how he did that.
Where? Right here?
Yeah, that button. Try that play button.
The play.
Yes.
Sorry. Boing. Come down.
There you go. That one.
Nope. Doesn't want to go for me.
Oh, well. Still possible to click through there.
You might want to click like just on the button itself, up there, just a few pixel up on the arrow.
Oh, I see. I think you're clicking on the word rather than the arrow.
Oh. She gone? Eric, you're muted.
Okay, I think we lost her again. So you're gonna hold tight and wait for that. I think one good little break question here is, there we go. Okay, unfocus on her. I'm curious if anybody has previously worked with any kind of sports psychologist or mental coach, if that's something that people have done before. Got a hand up from Lisa. I guess I have, Adam Campbell has worked with several. Yeah, cool. Has anybody done it specifically in the context of running? You can hold your space bar to unmute as well.
I worked with one before I went off to Worlds in 2019, because that was like the first time of going from just local races and like the field, which is our backyard, to like some big world stage. So it was a good experience to sit down with someone and just focus on like the sport side of things. But obviously, like when it's psychology, you focus on that element, but there's always a lot of like, additives to it. So I think it's awesome to consider seeing the whole picture and using those resources when it's necessary.
Was that something that you did like on an ongoing basis or just a few times?
For the couple of months leading into Worlds.
Oh, nice.
And then I saw her as well once I came back from Worlds and stuff.
Right. How was that conversation?
Yeah, it was interesting. It was, again, nice to have someone who is very disconnected from the whole experience to just like lay out all my feelings, instead of like, sometimes obviously if we're talking to our coach or to our partner, we might frame things differently or maybe try to be like stronger, or I don't know, just have a different perspective than having like someone who's completely removed, that you can just be like, blah, this is how I'm feeling. So there's different sessions of happiness, like tears, all that stuff. I think the very first session I went in there and I like just started crying within 10 minutes. So yeah, they are great because they let you have a space that you can just let go of anything that you might be, I don't know, holding within you, and any stresses you might have and all that stuff. So
I have a interesting story about a friend of mine who's a sports psychologist, and he was telling me about working with a downhill ski racer, an Olympic downhill ski racer. And, you know, same thing, like I don't think you can actually untie a lot of our sports anxieties and issues from, you know, whatever childhood issues and personal issues, like things are going on in your overall life. But so he found that there'd be a time in a race when he'd start having a moment of self-doubt, and he actually named that person, that like part of him, and called him Mike or something. And so Mike would step in when things would start to get difficult. And in the middle of this Olympic downhill run, you know, so whatever, minute and a half race, Mike appeared suddenly in his mind. And he's like, hey, Mike, thank you for showing up right now. I appreciate what you're doing, trying to protect me. I don't need your help right now. We can talk about this after the race. And he had this internal dialogue in the middle of his Olympic downhill run. Yeah. Yeah. We need to screenshot the way Eric's face is frozen right now.
Oh dear. I'm back. I'm so sorry. This is the first time my computer has crashed this many times. So my apologies. I'm going to start to talk fast.
It's all good, Christine. We got some people talking and telling some stories in the interim, and Adam told a fantastic story about an Olympic downhill skier that kept us on our toes and laughing. So we'll fire back to you and get your screen back up there. And Janelle was sharing as well. So we made good use of the time. We're glad to see you back though.
Fantastic. Okay, fingers crossed. Okay, here we go. Let's see how we go. Okay, and I'm just going to leave it like this. I'm sorry. Okay, so here we go. Take two. Mental performance coaching helps athletes and teams develop mental skills to perform consistently well in training and competition. Mental skills need to be taught and refined through repetition and guidance. And I think that's a really big thing, is that you're going to want to try these things, see how they work, debrief, move forward. Because some things are going to be great for you, other things aren't. You're going to need different tools at different times. Okay, so just so you know that. Every action an athlete takes has a mental component. So thinking about that everything that you're doing has that mental component in it. Okay, mental skills. What are some of those mental skills? Goal setting. And goal setting, we've got those three types of goals. We have outcome, performance, and process. All the studies that they've done have shown that athletes that only focus on outcome actually have less success than if they focus on the other two, the process and the performance goals. Visualization, mental rehearsal, focusing and refocusing techniques. That might be even as simple as doing almost some cognitive work of reframing, getting back. Definitely any kind of time we can tap into our senses. So focusing and refocusing, coming back to the present. That's a really big thing. I remember running with one of my friends that was trying to get her goal time at the Vancouver Marathon. And we had just come down the hill from UBC and we were at Spanish Banks. And she said something about, oh my God, I'm never going to make it around the seawall. And I said, well, you're not there yet. So focus on here, take your next step. So we need to be able to, a lot of times we go too far ahead. For triathletes that come out of the swim, it's a shitty swim time, or off the bike and it's a shitty bike time, or something happens. The race is never over until it's over. You never know what anybody else is doing. Well, sometimes you do, but on those longer races, you might not know. So really kind of staying in the moment, staying in the present, that's where those process goals can really get like quick feet. Okay, I'm back here. I'm back where I need to be. So looking at doing that. Confidence building. People, might not have the confidence to keep on going. Injury recovery is another area that we can really, so many studies have been done with visualization that you can actually, start to see the muscles activating through visualization. We can do that when we're rehabilitating. It's a great time to tap into some of those skills. Emotion regulation, running too high, too low. If anybody ever looks at the Huberman lab, Andrew Huberman, he's a neuroscientist and he does a lot of things, a lot of talks and that stuff. And his one talk on breathing, really, really interesting around when you have people that are really low, hypo aroused, and that you need to stimulate them, that Wim Hof breathing. And there's another technique that I'm not unsure of, but when you're doing that Wim Hof type breathing, that circular breath and then holding the breath, you're actually getting your whole nervous system elevated, getting into that little bit of discomfort. And you're doing that. That's a great way to train yourself in the sense of being a little bit out of discomfort. And how does that feel? There's also when we're too hyper aroused, how do we come back down? Again, breath work. I think he calls it a physiological sigh, is the latest research on that. And that is 2 inhales to 1 exhale. And they've actually found that that's the best way to bring people back down. So I've been working with that with a lot of people I work with that have high anxiety, trying to combine some of that breath work into it. So that's a great thing. And the breathing exercises are so wonderful. Breath is with us all the time. So yeah. So just thinking about that. Managing expectations. A lot of times it's self-expectations, or the expectations of others, and that how are we managing all of those? What's realistic? Developing that mental toughness. I had to laugh. I was on my trail run and I'm coming towards the end, and okay, it's not pretty. Let's just say that. But I hit the dirt. My mind wanders. I'm down. There's a guy right in front of me with 2 Jack Russells going for a walk. I pop myself up. And he goes, didn't see anything. And I said, me neither. Kept on going. But my one thought, I kind of chuckled to myself. I was going, thank God I do burpees. Like I hit the deck and I got up so fast and I was like, yes. So it didn't take away. I had a little chuckle because I always hit the dirt the minute that my mind wanders and I'm kind of thinking about something else. So, that mental toughness. And the other thing I thought about it was resilience. Right? When we think of that term resilience, getting up that 1 extra time that you fall down, right? You're always getting yourself up. And so I thought about that too. So that's great. And relaxation techniques. A lot of times we don't take the rest that we need. If you're old school like me, you like to keep on pushing and pushing and pushing until your body tells you, and it's your body's breaking down before you're recognizing it. And so, yeah, so I think there's lots of things there, and a lot of you might already be using that. Where do you start? One of the things I like to always say is get to know yourself as a rehabilitation trainer. My one area that I always had to start with was self-awareness, like awareness. People were unaware where their body was in space. They're unaware where their muscles are, how it activated, which muscle it was, because a lot of times with retraining, it's very specific. So that awareness piece. And as an athlete, are you aware? Are you aware of how you talk about yourself to others in your sport? Oh, you're always putting yourself down. Well, are you looking for others to bring yourself up, or what are you doing there? So yeah. So start developing that self-awareness around, and even looking at your strengths. What are you really good at? Where are your strengths? Kind of capitalize on those, build off those, and then add in with the other areas. And that self-awareness means knowing your strengths and weaknesses. The other part of it is thoughts, emotions, and behaviors. That's a lot of that cognitive behavioral stuff. And another, I'll go in, and there's another Andrew Huberman moment there. What motivates you? What inspires you? habits. What are your habits? What are your training habits? What are your racing habits? And your values and beliefs. What do you think of yourself as an athlete? What do you value about your sport, about people in your sport? I love this was the Iron Cowboy. This is a guy that did 100 Ironman in 100 days. And he talked about, some days you just need to meet yourself where you are today. And I love that quote. I think with doing our sports, we want to excel in certain areas and that stuff, but sometimes we just need to meet ourselves where we're at. As a counselor, I'm always meeting somebody where they're at. I'm not pushing them, kind of allowing them to set the pace, right? So we can do that with ourselves too, and with your coaches. It's that relationship, that coach and athlete. Developing self-awareness, learning to pay attention to your thoughts, your feelings, and your behaviors. Mood follows actions. So this is what Andrew Huberman was talking about. A lot of studies that they've done. A lot of times we think we need to change our thoughts, but what they found is that behavior has more impact. And behavior sometimes is hard. It's sometimes hard to start, but once we do that, that actually has it's a bigger catalyst for changing thoughts and feelings. So thinking of your behaviors that you're doing, becoming more aware of just your strengths and weaknesses. Okay, identifying blind spots. It's a great thing to work with if you're with a coaching team, with other athletes, ask them. So, when I talk about myself, what are you guys gonna get? Maybe it's always, well, you're always putting yourself down or whatever. So just looking at that and looking at your core beliefs and values. This is a really big one. And this is where I find that there can be some of that disconnect. We've got these athletes that really want to perform really well, but they're almost like the athlete that strives. There's a difference with the athlete that strives for perfection and the athlete that strives for excellence. And the athlete that's striving for perfection, when they make a mistake, it's always their fault. It's that self-critical, self-judgment kind of thing that comes in, and it brings them down. And the athletes that's striving for excellence, they'll be looking at that going, oh, okay, how can I use that in order to improve myself, right? It's not, they're trying something, they're pushing themselves. So they're taking a different perspective. So looking at your core beliefs, what do you believe? The cognitive behavioral triangle. Again, this is something that we use a lot in counseling and psychology, is that they're all related. When we change one, it can sometimes change the other. So always knowing when we're looking at our thoughts or our feelings, what can we change? And again, looking at how can we change maybe our behavior in order to change those thoughts and feelings. And using mindfulness techniques. And this is something that I'm kind of delving into a bit more. Some of the training that I've done, I've just finished off my EMDR, which is eye movement desensitization reprocessing. And one of the things they do is they actually use it for performance, and it's got some amazing skills that transfer over really well into performance or athletics. Couple of things, we do a lot of resourcing with EMDR. EMDR is one of the most heavily evidence-based treatment protocols for PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. It is definitely used to treat trauma. Before you're ever getting somebody into a place where they can start to process their trauma, you do this thing called resourcing. And so a lot of sessions are spent resourcing. And so some of the resourcing, one of the things is we get people to create a container. And when I think of the container, I always think of way back when I knew Jen Seeger a long time ago, and she was just starting off, and she would always say, well, I put everything in my pain box. right? And some athletes have that, and they can get to this point of pain and they're putting it in their pain box. And this container is a place that holds things that you might not want to deal with right now, but that you can come back to and you can deal with later. So that's a really neat idea about it. The other thing about EMDR is it uses adaptive information processing. So it's trying to change the nervous system instead of being always triggered on one thing. And some of the techniques that we use for that are bilateral stimulation. So for kids, we get them to do little butterfly taps on their shoulders, monkey taps, crab taps, whatever. And sometimes even for adults, we resource them with this. This bilateral tapping is actually, if we're doing it a little bit slower, it's calming. We also use eye movement. What's interesting is that as runners, you're always doing bilateral movement with the legs, and that the eyes shift, right? Especially when we're running technical, they're looking down. When we're walking, it's a little bit more shifting side to side, and that can actually calm the nervous system. So it's a very interesting technique. Mindfulness, again, using that. A lot of people think that they sometimes have to be in this Zen-like state and sitting still. I love doing mindful walking. Mindfulness is just about being in the present moment without judgment or criticism. So can you be there? We might need to get into different states for that. Looking at opportunities and challenges. Okay, so that this is where it becomes more than just the strengths and weaknesses, creating strategies that will incorporate your strengths, daily routines, meditations. When I first started doing some of my meditation, I wouldn't prescribe that to anybody else because I made myself have to find that 10 minutes a day, because sometimes, you know, we think, oh, it's 10 minutes. 10 minutes out of a busy day is a lot of time. So if I wasn't going to do it myself, I wasn't going to give it to other people. And now I found that I get up early. I still teach fitness at 6 a.m. I'm up at, 4:50 in order to have my coffee, have my meditation, whatever. We create time for what we need to do. It's not always going to be there. So yeah. Stopping or limiting your weaknesses, learning what holds you back physically and mentally in your sport or your pursuits. Creating opportunities, focusing on the benefits, the social, emotional, looking at a bigger umbrella than just your sport, whatever. What does it mean to belong to a community? I think after COVID, a lot of people are seeking connection. And how are we connecting? So I'm just helping you overcome your challenges. And a big thing is understanding your triggers. If you've had any kind of incident, I will share one with you about myself. I was at Ironman Arizona, and I'm a strong swimmer. I like to start off in the front. I like to get out there and make people swim over me. Where the announcer was way behind us. And so I was right at the beach, right at the front line. And the gun went off behind, but I couldn't hear it in the front. And so everybody surged from behind. So by the time I hit the water, I had 4 or 5 people on top of me. I started to have a laryngospasm. I got my head up out of the water. All I could see was an orange kayak. And I thought, just make it to the kayak. Made it to the kayak and hanging on there and everything. So made it through, got through my Ironman. But when I went back to do an Ironman again, it was actually Ironman up in Whistler. I got to the start line and I was right at the start line, right in front. And all of a sudden I could feel this surge of, oh my God, I got fearful, everything, moved over to the side. And I just did my own line. I went to a place where I felt safe. It was great. I swam in open water. I was waving at people. I was still being competitive, but for me, I just needed to make that shift. So we're going to have these triggers that come up, especially when we've had a scary thing happen to us, whether it's been a bike crash. Getting people back on their bikes after a bike crash can be something that requires a little bit more skill and technique. And there is trauma with that, understanding that. So yeah, so just kind of knowing all of that. Here, your core beliefs and values, questions to ask yourself. What are some of your core beliefs? And just reflecting, are there self-limiting beliefs that are preventing you from reaching your full potential? How do you talk to yourself, to others, and to yourself? So when I was out on my run, again, I haven't done a lot of technical running. And I definitely, as I've aged, I've lost agility is a big thing that I've lost. And so I'm going down this stuff, and when I was talking to people, I'm like, oh yeah, I'm racing, you know, and I took it really lightly. And when I was out there, I thought, no, you're racing. Like, what do you do when you race? Like, get on it. Stop, you know. So the way I was talking to others, telling others, was just a self-protective mechanism for myself. Like, oh, if I don't get, you know, the right time, it was like, screw that, I'm racing, you know. And there was parts on the path where the faster guys were coming, and I was like, buddy, you better call, because you know what, if this slow person keeps on stopping, I'm never going to get to the finish line. So figure it out. You're moving faster than me. Go around. I'll move over, but I'm still going, right? So learning how to use your skills and tools that you have. What values are most important to you? You know, what are some past successes? How did you achieve them? And write a new story. What you continually tell yourself becomes your story. And that is so true. So as I say, just be aware of how you're talking to yourself. One of the things I will add, I talked about this front loading, which I think is a really interesting skill. So when kids that are high anxiety or have a hard time focusing, what we do with them is we kind of lay out their days. We let them know everything. There's no surprises. We don't want to get them too elevated in that stuff. And so before my race on the weekend, I thought, okay, front load. All right, why are you here? I knew my why. What are your goals? Okay, my goal was to work on technique, right? Anytime there was a downhill, just find your feet. So I had my goal. I knew my why. You know, goal times everything. I loaded myself up. Okay, what if something happens? And this is another thing. Like, when I've worked with athletes in the past, you're like, but what if I get a flat? I'm like, what? Okay, tell me, what if you get a flat? What are you going to do? You can stop? Are you going to, no, you're going to keep going. You're going to figure it out. You're either going to wait, you're going to try and fix it yourself. You're going to go through. So this is another one of the things that you want to kind of, you know, even when you're doing your visualization, you want to visualize your success multiple times. Then you want to come back and you want to visualize what happens with some of those hurdles. Okay. And then you want to go back and you want to visualize that success again, and how you want to see yourself maybe in the future. Where do you really want to be? So using all of those skill sets, it's great. They're just great learning tools. And as I say, if you're, you know, when I trail run, I'm not competitive. I don't call myself competitive. When I race triathlon, watch it. There's a different person that comes out of that. And so I'm learning how to balance both of those, and how to be a little bit, when I do get into maybe my Ironman, where I am a little bit more perfectionist, critical, whatever, how do I soften that so I can enjoy it a little bit more, right? Because I think that's why the majority of us are doing it. We still want to find the fun in it. Yeah, so that is basically what I have for you. I would like to open it up and see if there are any questions, comments, whatever you have to add. Yeah, and the other thing is, as a mental performance consultant, coach, I like to really work with coaches. I think everybody, we all want to have our support team around us. And I'm just another one. I'm just another component of that. I know that when I did first start consulting, that my supervisor used to always come up to me. She goes, "You're a great coach, but," and the problem is that as a coach, I'm really good at telling. As a consultant, I want the athlete to find out what works for them. And I'm going to guide them there with a very different set of questions that I would use rather than when I'm in my coaching role and I'm telling. So, you know, that's another thing. So yeah, thank you very much for your time, everyone. And I will open up the floor.
Awesome. Thanks a lot, Christine. I'll wait for some questions to come in here, but maybe I would just be curious to hear you kind of, or hear your comments on the idea of how the crossover, I guess, between our mental state, or yeah, for lack of a better term, in day-to-day life versus our, you know, athletic moments, and you know, maybe how you've seen athletes that use that in one direction or the other. Yeah.
And by mental state, do you mean like how you're dealing with your everyday?
Yeah, I guess maybe either skills or just success in doing so. But yeah, how you can use some of the stuff we take from sports into day-to-day life, or how we use sport to deal with day-to-day life. I think that's probably more appropriate. I think we could probably take a poll of this group of how many people are guilty of using sport and athletics to help cope with any number of good or bad things that go on in the rest of their life. So yeah, that's where I'm going with that.
Yeah. Well, you know, I think that again, it's looking at kind of your strengths. Like, I think a lot of us can, as athletes, we learn to, there's that little bit of suffering, that discomfort. And, you know, we have an ability to push through. And some of those skills that we're using to push through, we can be using in other areas of our lives. And so that's what I would say with that. I actually find all the skills, all the mental skills have such great crossover. So even tonight, every time my computer went out, I was just like, all right, do I have control of it? No, let it go. You know, breathe into it. Okay, just wait. So I don't have to get overly anxious.
I think I might book in for an immediate appointment with that technology crashing.
Yeah, but you know, and the other thing is, as athletes, I think we are quite aware of our body, and it's learning to listen to that a little bit more in other areas. You know, we can feel the anxiety, and some of us don't. And if you're one of those people that really shut down your body, I would kind of, and by shut down your body, it's like you stop feeling what's happening in it. And our bodies are our biggest kind of resource to tell us when something doesn't feel right or feel off. And you know, so kind of using that, I hope I'm going down the right course with your question here, Eric. But
Yeah, for sure.
I'm kind of thinking that there's, you know, even with like as myself struggling with depression for years and years, and especially I would crash after every endurance event. I would tank. I was so low. And there was actually a hormonal imbalance that was happening for me at the same time. And so figuring that out with my doctor, but also getting some skills to help me manage always looking negatively at everything. You know, that self-critical, the people that are the perfectionists and that stuff, it's giving them some skills to help them manage not only in their sport, but in life, in whatever we're dealing with, we're always going to have adversity. I really like a perspective shifting too. Yeah. So I hope that helps.
Yeah. And then I think my follow-up to that was, you mentioned athletes are really good at pushing through. And I think that's like a pretty, common observation. And I think, one of my most common like things that I do in this role as coach is kind of like persuading athletes not to always push through. And so I wonder if you have any suggestions there on how to kind of manage that, or even just kind of self-recognize where, I'm in a zone where pushing through is smart, or I'm in a zone where pushing through is detrimental.
Yeah. That's a good one. And I think that comes down to two sides. Sometimes it is kind of monitoring, might be heart rate, right? That resting heart rate, whether it's really elevated. It's also looking at other areas of your life that might be causing you stress and that are contributing to maybe you're feeling overwhelmed. And when you always feel like you're pushing through, it might be the time that you need to step back. So kind of looking at the whole picture of what's happening. Most of us are not professional athletes. We have jobs, we have lives, we have families, pets, whatever we might have, and how are you balancing all of that? And by balancing, it's kind of, I never think that the scales are like this. It's like some things that sometimes are priority and we have to make time for that. But then it's also finding that space to have the other things in our life that that might be important to us, that we still make time for those. But it is a teeter-totter. It's like the scales are constantly moving. When we think of balance, it's never this even, like, oh, I have enough time for this and enough time for this. No, right? We make time, it ebb and flows through the day, and that pushing through, ask yourself why. I have athletes that they're almost training out of fear. I'm never going to get there. I missed this day. I've got to make it up, blah, blah. And it's really like, well, like, are you, sometimes our training that we're doing needs to be giving us confidence that when we get to that start line or whatever we're training for, that we feel confident and we can do it. We might still be like, well, I've overcome my injury, or maybe this or that, whatever. Right. But it's kind of putting everything into perspective and knowing yourself as an athlete. Why do you constantly push through? Why do you have to suffer? Are you taking rest? If you're not taking rest, why aren't you taking rest? And so those are some of those areas. So I get what you're saying there, Eric, with the pushing through. And there are times then we want to, and there are times when we shouldn't. One of the things I do like to distinguish with athletes is pain and discomfort. And sometimes what's pain? Pain is, I'm off to physio after this. Like if I keep on going, I'm heading to physio. But discomfort is like, okay, this is hurting. This is hard. I feel a little niggle, but can I self-correct? Okay, I can keep going. So that might be another term. Another kind of tool.
Yeah, that's a good one. I think that's something that is very difficult to describe, but often it's one of those things where you know it when you see it or you experience it. I think most athletes can kind of differentiate those really well. But yeah, one of the things that I always come back to is, is our training, even for athletes that are on a relatively high level, whether it's a portion of their income or they're just highly competitive, but let alone recreational athletes, the training really shouldn't contribute to stress, contribute to overall stress. And I find that being a kind of a good delineator, where if you find yourself becoming more stressed out because of the training for whatever reason, then that's something that we need to reassess.
Yeah, that's very good. Yeah, yeah. And that stress thing is it negative stress, right? Or because the training there is going to be stress with training, and it can be a positive stress too, right? So I like how you said that. Is it taking away from your experience or adding more stress to your life? Absolutely.
I'll jump in real quick here. I think it's worth wrapping it up here in about 2.5 minutes. I think that would work for everybody. But yeah, I think there's obviously a whole host of different reasons why someone could and should reach out to yourself or someone else in this field. And I know when you and I connected personally, I mentioned, for me, 2013, when I look back on it now, was my best athletic season. And the crazy thing about it is I had one bad race in literally 9 races, and the one bad race happened to be late in the year, and it sat with me for a solid six plus months. And I wish in hindsight at the time that I had the resources that we have now and had someone to reach out to, because that shouldn't have left me kind of struggling for half a year to recover from one bad effort when the entire year was so positive otherwise. So for you, I would consider this everything from prehab to rehab, really. There's reasons to connect with you in advance of events, when you can identify some of the fears you might have going into it, and also post-event if you notice during the event that there's some things that you're having to deal with that maybe you want to give a voice to and work through. So the question I would have for you at this point is, for how we'll obviously let people know how to connect with you, but what does it look like for someone to connect with you? So what would an initial consultation look like? What's the time frame? What's the price point? And kind of talk us through what it would be like if someone reached out to you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's really self-referral or referral from coaches or whatever. That's basically how it's done, through either calling me, emailing me, and price point and that stuff. I do my consulting at $120 an hour. And I kind of, right now I'm like free to, I shouldn't say free, but I do actually meet people a lot of times outdoors. I do a lot of walking therapy and that stuff.
Real quick, sorry to jump in and cut you off. Can that be expensed through some plans with your certifications?
Absolutely, yeah. So a lot of times you can get it through, most things will cover, because I'm a registered clinical counselor. It's covered under, if you have counseling under your benefits, it can be covered. Yeah, so that can be, if you need therapeutic exercise, I can do that too under my RMT stuff. No. Here I go, selling everything, right? No. So yeah, and a lot of times, what I like to do is I do like to have an initial session, because what I find is that anytime we're doing performance coaching and that stuff, we have to make sure that we jive, that I'm a person that you feel comfortable talking to. And I know I'm not going to be the person for everybody. I get it. I've been a coach a long time. I've been a trainer, counselor, and I'm not the right fit for everybody. And I don't take it personally. I know that there's people that I want to go to, whether it's a certain massage therapist or a certain counselor. And that's my choice. And so I'm really open and honest about that. And I like to actually give people like that free 15 to 30 minutes just to have a talk and say, okay, is this something that would be right for you? And how do we move forward with it? And then set up some counseling sessions. A lot of times I'm doing like one counseling session with people. We like to develop, we look at the overall plan that you have, develop some skills. You need to go away and practice those skills. This is not something that we're doing every week. It's usually that it might even be every 3 weeks. It might be pre-race and then a post-race debrief too. There's different ways that it can work.
I love it. That's a good spot to finish on there. And I know that it can be a little bit daunting that we're up to, I think, 25 or 26 people on the call tonight. So it's still a group dynamic, even though we're in our own spaces right now. If anybody would like to fire anything directly to Christine, just for some feedback, Christine, if you want to provide your email address maybe, or they can hit us up if they prefer. So you can connect one-on-one and see if you'd like to take that somewhere and just start off with an easy question. But otherwise, I'll throw back to Eric real quick to sum it up.
Yeah, cool. Well, I will, yeah, there's the email in the chat. We'll post the recorded version on or via email and send out the email as well. But yeah, thanks everybody for coming in. Does anybody have any questions to wrap up or any other comments, coaches, anything? Cool. Sweet. Well, really awesome to see everybody, even just kind of briefly in Zoom land again. And yeah, we'll just try to kind of keep these types of things going. So thanks everybody for coming, and thanks a lot to Christine.
Yeah.
Christine,
Thank you, everyone.
you did a fantastic job. Thank you so much.
Awesome.
Okay.
Have a good night, everybody.
Happy
Guys,
Good night,
training.
bye.
everyone. Good to see you guys.
Bye.
Cheers.
Bye.